It's been nearly a year since I found out the truth about my wife, Lisa, and I still wake up sometimes with a knot in my stomach that refuses to untie. We'd been together almost 5 years, building this idea of a future, a life. She always seemed perfect, smart, funny, caring, the kind of woman who'd make you think you'd hit the jackpot. But something cracked that illusion wide open one afternoon. It started with a simple email alert on my phone. I was sitting in the living room, half watching TV, when a notification popped up. I usually ignore these, but this one had a hotel receipt attached. I froze. It was from a weekend a few weeks before, the one I'd been away for a business trip. The receipt was in her name, but the hotel was 40 miles from where I was. I didn't think much of it at first, maybe a girl's weekend, a surprise trip. But then I looked closer at the dates and the charges. My stomach sank. The hotel was paid for with her credit card, and the reservation was made under her name. But the check-in time was late at night, after she'd told me she was staying at her sister. The amount? Significantly more than a standard weekend stay. Plus, there was a second charge and ride from the hotel to somewhere else. My heart hammered in my chest. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling my palms go clammy. My mind raced. Why would she lie? Who was she with? I felt a prick of anger, but mostly a deep, cold shock. I wanted to call her right then, to demand an explanation, but I knew better. I had to see for myself if this was just some mistake, some coincidence. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I dug through our bank statements, our messages. Nothing else seemed out of place, until I found a string of texts between her and Tom, my best friend who was supposed to be like family. Their messages were casual at first, joking about work, planning a barbecue for the weekend. But then I saw the shift. The late-night chats, the flirty emojis, the private jokes I'd never seen before. I felt a sick twist in my gut. How could I have missed this? How could I have trusted her all this time? The betrayal was so deep I could taste it. It wasn't just about the affair. It was the fact that she'd lied so convincingly. She'd been sneaking around, hiding a secret that shattered everything I thought I knew about her. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I needed a plan. I couldn't trust her to be honest anymore. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that would leave no room for denial. I started piecing things together, realizing that her betrayal ran far deeper than I'd ever imagined. I was furious, not just because she cheated, but because she'd done it with my best friend, the one person I trusted the most. That's when I knew I couldn't let this go. I needed to make her see that I wasn't the fool she thought I was, that I was willing to do whatever it took to get justice. The first step was obvious. I had to find out everything she tried to hide. I needed her to slip up again, and when she did, I'd be ready. The plan was coming together, but I didn't realize how far I was willing to go. I just knew one thing: this wasn't going to end without consequences. As I sat there staring at the screen, I felt my hands tighten into fists. The betrayal was like acid burning through my chest. I'd trusted her with everything, and now I was left with nothing but the ruins of what we built. I had to get my revenge, and I'd do it in a way she'd never see coming. I closed my laptop slowly, the room suddenly feeling colder. My mind was racing with possibilities, with questions I needed answers to. But one thing was clear: this wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about showing her she couldn't get away with it. I drew a deep breath, trying to steady my pounding heart. It was time to put the plan into motion. I didn't know exactly how it would end, but I knew I wouldn't be the one left broken. Not this time. I spent the next few days walking around in a fog, my mind constantly replaying the evidence I'd uncovered. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hotel receipt, the texts between her and Tom, the way my stomach twisted. Trust, that thing I'd always thought was unbreakable, felt shattered into 1,000 tiny shards. I couldn't just let her get away with this. No, I needed a plan, something precise, something that make her regret ever crossing me. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't just confront her blindly. That'd be too risky, too obvious. I had to be smart. I needed leverage, proof that I knew everything, something she couldn't deny. That's when I decided I'd follow her, see who she was meeting, where she went after her supposed sister's weekend. I started sticking around, watching her every move. It's amazing how your senses sharpen when your entire world is crashing down. One evening, I noticed her acting nervous. She left the house quickly, her eyes flickering with something I'd never seen before: guilt, fear. I didn't know, but I grabbed my coat and followed her. She drove out of town, taking the back roads to a nondescript motel. I parked a few blocks away, trying to stay hidden, watching her get out of her car. She was tense, her hands trembling slightly as she unlocked the room door. I waited outside, feeling my fists tighten. I'd never felt so angry, so betrayed. This was my life, my marriage, and she was throwing it all away just for a moment of secret pleasure. I needed to see more, get more proof. I snapped a few photos from the shadows, then slipped away before she could notice. The next morning, I collected everything I'd seen. I went through her phone, her emails, her bank statements again, making sure I'd have enough to confront her. But I also wanted to plan my next move carefully. I wasn't just going to storm in and accuse her. I needed her to see I wasn't clueless anymore. I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies. That evening, I invited Tom over for a chat. When he arrived, I didn't waste time. I looked him right in the eyes and said, "I know about the hotel, the texts, the late nights, everything. Don't bother denying it. Tell me, why her? Why me?" His face went pale, but he tried to keep his composure. He mumbled something about how it was a mistake, that he never meant to hurt me, but I cut him off. "A mistake? You're my best friend. How could you do this? To me, to us. Did it ever occur to you that I might find out?" The anger in my voice was raw, but I kept my tone steady. I wanted him to understand how deep the betrayal ran. From there, I laid out my plan. I told Tom I was going to make her come clean, but I wasn't just after a simple apology. No, I wanted her to understand that I knew everything, and that I was prepared to take action. I told him I'd be waiting for her to slip up again, and when she did, I'd be ready. I saw the flicker of fear in Tom's eyes. That was good. He knew I meant business. I left him standing there, dumbfounded. I could tell he was starting to realize that I wasn't just some naive guy who'd get turned around by a sob story. I was dangerous now, focused, deliberate, ready to strike. The next few days were a blur of planning and anticipation. I took mental notes of her routine, the places she frequented, the times she seemed most nervous. I kept my phone close, ready to catch her in the act if she slipped up again. Every heartbeat I felt that knot tighten, knowing that the moment I'd been waiting for was coming closer. One night, I saw her leaving in the middle of the night. She looked over her shoulder, her face tense, as if she knew that something was off. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I got in my car, started following her from a safe distance, ready to execute the plan I'd meticulously put together. I wanted her to see that I was no longer the fool she thought I was, that I could see right through her lies. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, she'd understand that her betrayal had consequences, and I'd make sure she felt every single one of them. I knew I was risking everything, but at this point I didn't care. I'd gone too far to turn back now. The night was heavy with anticipation. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as she pulled into the parking lot of another strange place, another hotel. I parked nearby, watching her step out of the car and walk inside. This was it. The moment I'd been planning for. I just didn't know how deep it would go or how much she would regret crossing me. But one thing was certain: I wasn't going to back down. That night I sat in my car a few blocks away, watching her disappear into the hotel. My hands were trembling, not from fear but from a simmering anger that was finally bubbling over. Every detail I had uncovered, the hotel, the texts, the hotel ride, came rushing through my mind like a wrecking ball. I had everything I needed now. It was just a matter of timing. I'd already decided how I wanted to execute this. Not to humiliate her publicly. No, that would be too easy. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to understand that she'd crossed lines that could never be erased. The goal was to make her regret, to show her that I knew the truth and was willing to do something about it. I stayed in my car for what felt like hours, watching her through the window of the room she rented. She was tense, packing back and forth, glancing at her phone as if expecting someone. I wanted to scream at her, but I kept cool. Patience had become my weapon. I knew I had to wait for the right moment. Eventually, she stepped outside for a smoke. I saw her lit cigarette glow in the dark, and that's when I decided it was time. I quietly pulled out my phone and texted Tom, just a simple message. "Tonight's the night, be ready." I didn't want him involved in the confrontation, but he needed to know I was taking the next step. I also made sure I had a recording app running on my phone. If she slipped up again, I'd have undeniable proof. I'd been planning this for days, and now everything was set. I just needed her to make the mistake I was waiting for. Suddenly, she looked around nervously as if she sensed someone was watching. That's when I saw her reach into her purse. She pulled out a set of keys, then slipped into the car she'd parked earlier. I stayed put, watching her drive away, feeling the adrenaline surge through my veins. I waited a few more minutes before pulling out of my hiding spot. My heart was pounding and my palms felt slick with sweat. I knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. If she was meeting someone again, I'd find out who and what for. The next stop was her house. I parked a few streets away and turned on my flashlight, ready to check her driveway. Sure enough, her car was gone. I crept closer, my senses on high alert. The house was quiet, dark, peaceful, but that only made it more ominous. I took some photos of her driveway, her car's empty space, and then slipped back into my car. I sat there a moment, thinking about what I was about to do. This wasn't about revenge alone. It was about setting things straight, about making her see that I wasn't a fool. I was furious, yes, but also strategic. If she thought I was a pushover, she'd keep doing what she was doing. That wasn't going to happen anymore. Over the next few days, I stayed on high alert. I kept watch, gathering more evidence, waiting until I knew she'd slip up again. My mind kept racing. How to confront her, what to say, how to make her understand that I was no longer blind to her lies. I was ready to catch her in the act, too. Make her feel the sting of betrayal in a way she'd never forget. And then it happened. One night I got a call from Tom, sounding rattled. I could hear the tension in his voice as he whispered, "She's back at the hotel. I think she's meeting him again. She's definitely cheating." That was my cue. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and headed out, heart pounding with a mixture of rage and resolve. I parked nearby, watching her walk into the hotel once more. This time I wasn't just observing, I was preparing to act. I had a plan, a way to make her see that her lies had consequences. I wanted her to realize that I knew everything, that I wasn't going to let her deceit slide just because she thought she could get away with it. I waited until she disappeared into the room, then I slipped inside the lobby, pretending to be just another guest. I arranged a little surprise, one she wouldn't forget. As she sat inside, oblivious to what was coming, I sat in the shadows, ready to deliver the message she'd never see coming. When I finally stepped in, I wanted her to feel the cold reality of her actions, to understand that trust once broken is impossible to mend. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about reclaiming whatever shred of dignity I had left, and I was going to make sure she paid for her betrayal one way or another. The moment I stepped into that hotel room, I felt the cold grip of anticipation tighten around me. I'd gone over every detail in my head, how I'd confront her, what I'd say, what I'd do. But nothing prepared me for the rush of adrenaline that hit me when I saw her there, sitting awkwardly on the edge of the bed, her face pale and eyes darting around as if she knew I was coming. She looked up and nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw me. Her face twisted with a mixture of guilt and surprise. I didn't say a word at first. I just looked at her, feeling my fists clench and unclench. Her eyes flickered to the doorway, probably hoping she could slip out or maybe pretend I wasn't there. It was pathetic. "So, I finally found you," I said, voice steady, but cold. "What the hell are you doing here, Lisa, meeting him again?" The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I made myself say them. I wanted her to know I wasn't blind anymore. She hesitated, then tried to brush it off with a weak excuse. "It's not what you think. I was just talking to Tom. We had some things to discuss." I cut her off sharply. "You think I'm stupid enough to believe that? I saw the receipts. The hotel, the ride, the texts. You're cheating on me, Lisa. With Tom, my best friend." My voice cracked slightly, but I kept it steady. "How long has this been going on?" Her face crumpled and she looked down at her hands. "It's not what you think, I swear. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was stupid, okay? I didn't want you to find out like this." I felt my stomach turn sour. All the times she'd told me she loved me, all the promises we made, it was all a lie. I'd been defenseless, trusting her blindly, and now I was paying the price. I clenched my jaw. That's bullshit, Lisa. You lied to my face every day. You let me believe we had something real, and all along you were sneaking behind my back. She broke down then, tears streaming down her cheeks, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. This wasn't about her tears. It was about justice. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small recorder I'd started that night, the one I'd hidden just in case I needed proof. I pressed play, and her voice, confessing her feelings for Tom and her regret, filled the room. "You see," I said bitterly, "I've got the evidence. You can't deny it now. But I want to ask, what did he really mean to you? Was I just some fool you were pretending to love?" She looked down, silent. The room felt heavy with silence, broken only by her quiet sobs. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I looked at her, feeling the rage simmering beneath the surface. "Get your things," I told her coldly. "You're leaving, you're not staying here tonight, not anymore." My voice was firm now. "You've lied enough, you've betrayed me enough. I want you gone, and I want nothing to do with you anymore." Her face twisted in pain, but I didn't care. I'd spent years building something with her, only to get this betrayal in return. I walked out of that room, my heart pounding in my chest. Every step away from her felt like shedding a heavy weight I'd carried for too long. Back in my car, I stared at the hotel's neon sign until the words blurred. I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't undo, but I also knew I'd taken back some sense of control. I finally understood that trust was a fragile thing, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. The next morning, I started the process of ending everything. I called a lawyer, prepared the paperwork to divorce her, and drafted a message to my friends, telling them what I'd found out. The shockwaves rippled through my life, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I had finally peeled back the layers of lies and deceit, and I was done pretending everything was okay. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling the emptiness settle in. The betrayal had cut deep, but I realized something important. I'd finally taken control. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I was done being blind to the truth. I'd learned that sometimes the only way to truly move on is to rip off the mask and face the ugly reality head-on. I knew now that trust, like fragile glass, can shatter in an instant. But healing, that's a process. And I was about to start mine. No more lies, no more deception. Just me figuring out how to pick up the pieces and move forward. And I knew one thing for sure: I'd never trust blindly again. Not anyone. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog, every step weighed down by the heavy realization of what she'd done, and what I'd had to do to finally wake up. I still got flashes of that room, her tear-streaked face, and the sick feeling in my stomach. Confrontation had gone exactly the way I intended, raw, honest, with no room for her denial. But it left me hollow, like I'd been drained of something vital. I spent most of that week sorting out the chaos she left behind. The divorce papers were filed. The house still felt too big without her, and my mind kept circling back to Tom. The betrayal was so deep I was almost afraid I wouldn't recover from it. Trust wasn't just broken, it was shattered into a million tiny shards that cut me every time I tried to pick them up. Still, I knew I couldn't let her win, not by leaving me in this mess. I kept replaying every conversation in my head. How she looked trying to lie, her voice trembling when she admitted it, her trembling hands. It all played on a loop, fueling this simmering rage that I couldn't quite control. But I also knew I had to be strategic. Wrapping myself in hostility wouldn't bring clarity. I had to think clearly, plan my next move. One evening I sat in my apartment staring at the wall when my phone buzzed. It was Tom. Just his name made my stomach churn. I hesitated before answering. "Look," he started, voice strained. "I know I screwed up, but I want to tell you something. She's not the person you think she is. She's manipulative, and she's been lying to both of us for a long time." I felt my jaw tight. "What are you saying, Tom?" "I'm saying I never loved her the way she acted. She used me just like she used you. I didn't realize it at first, but now I see it. She's an expert at hiding her true side. You gotta understand, I don't want to be part of this anymore." For a moment I didn't say anything, just listened as he continued. You're better off without her, trust me. She's a professional at making you think she's innocent. But I swear I saw her with someone else again last night. Same hotel, same pattern. That was the confirmation I needed. I already suspected it, but hearing it from him sealed it. She had played us both, used us. That old feeling, anger mixed with betrayal, flared anew. Thanks for telling me, I finally said, voice low. I needed to hear that. I don't think I can trust anyone anymore, Tom, not really. I get it, he said, voice soft. Just focus on yourself. You deserve better, trust me on that. After that call, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't just going to let her slip away, feeling like she'd won somehow. No, I had to make her see that I knew everything, that her carefully crafted lies had finally been exposed. So I devised a plan. I wanted her to realize that I'd been watching, that I was always one step ahead. It was time to show her she couldn't cheat her way out of this. I'd make her confront her own lies, and I'd do it in the most public way I could. I secretly hired a private investigator. I gave him all the details, her habits, her routines, the hotels she visited. I asked him to gather everything he could, photos, videos, anything that proved her ongoing betrayal. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted her to see that I'd been tracking her, that I knew exactly what she was doing. In the meantime, I started collecting my own evidence, screenshots, copies of her messages, a detailed timeline of her lies. I began preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I knew it'd come sooner or later, and I wanted to be ready. One night, I got the final piece of my plan. My pie sent me photos, her sneaking out of the hotel late at night, meeting someone in a parking lot. The evidence was irrefutable. I printed everything, making sure I had a comprehensive record. The day I was ready, I sent her a message. Simple, direct, and cold. You've betrayed me in ways I never imagined. I have proof of everything. Don't bother denying it. Meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop downtown. Be prepared to explain yourself. I saw her get the message, hesitation flickering across her face. She knew she'd been caught. The game, I realized, was over. The truth was out, and all that was left was her reaction. I kept my composure as I waited at the coffee shop, sipping my coffee, trying to steady my nerves. When she finally arrived, her face was pale, eyes darting everywhere. She sat down across from me, trembling slightly, and I looked right into her eyes. Lisa, I said quietly, you lied, you cheated, and you manipulated everyone around you. I have all the proof I need. Now it's time you tell me the truth. Why? She looked down, tears pooling once again, but I was done waiting. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. This was the moment I'd been building toward, her unmasking herself completely, exposing the lies she'd built her life on. And I knew one thing for sure, this was the beginning of the end. I sat across from her, watching her shoulders tremble as she struggled to find her words. There was quiet except for the faint hum of conversation around us, but inside the air felt thick with tension. I'd laid all my cards on the table, proof, evidence, the truth that she could no longer deny. Her face was flushed, eyes glassy, but I saw something darker lurking beneath. Shame, maybe, or a desperate attempt to cling to some shred of composure. Lisa, I said softly but firmly, you've lied to me for so long I don't even recognize the woman I married. You thought you could keep cheating behind my back, pretend everything was fine while you played your little game with Tom. But I found out everything. And now I want you to understand one thing. There's no coming back from this. Her lips trembled and she looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was stupid. Stupid? I interrupted, voice rising just enough to cut through her excuses. You think a stupid mistake justifies ruining our marriage. You lied, betrayed me, and never cared about what I felt. You think a sorry will fix this. She finally looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you, I love you. No, I snapped, feeling the hostility bubble up inside me. You don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. You'd have been honest from the start. But instead you played me for a fool, and I was too blind to see it. I reached into my pocket and a small envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside were the printed copies of her hotel receipts, the photos the pie collected, the chat logs I'd saved. I slid it across the table toward her. Here, I said coldly, everything you need to see. This is your legacy, your betrayal laid bare. You can lie, deny, or try to spin it somehow, but the truth is right here. She clutching the envelope, trembling so hard her hands almost shook it apart. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "Don't do this. I'll fix it, I swear. I'll go to counseling, I'll do anything, just don't ruin everything." I looked at her, and for the first time I felt something I hadn't felt in months: clarity. Her tears, her pleas, they all felt like a sick joke now. I had already made my decision. I'd spent so long trusting her, fighting for us, but trust, once broken, can't be repaired. Not this deep. "Sorry," I said quietly, "but I'm done. I can't stay with someone who lied to me every step of the way. I'm ending this today." I reached across the table, grabbing the keys to my apartment and the divorce papers I'd prepared. I slid them toward her. "Here's the legal way I'm cutting ties. You're leaving, and I never want to see you again. I want you out of my life forever." Her eyes widened, and she looked like she might scream or beg, but I stood up, voice firm enough to silence her. "You made your choice, Lisa, and I've made mine." As I turned to walk away, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief mingled with sorrow. I was finally taking back control, reclaiming what little dignity I had left. I felt lighter, even if the wound still burned deep beneath the surface. In that moment, I realized something important. The trust I'd once had was gone, but that didn't mean I had to stay broken. I could rebuild. The pain was real, but so was the strength I found in finally walking away. Walking out of that, I knew that my sense of betrayal would stay with me for a long time. But I also knew this: there's no coming back from betrayal like hers. The only choice now was to move forward, unshackle myself from the past, and find a way to trust again. Not blindly, but cautiously. Because the real lesson wasn't just about revenge or justice. It was about learning to protect myself, to listen to those tiny red flags I'd ignored for too long. And as I drove away that day, leaving her behind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally saw the truth clearly. And sometimes that's enough to start over.